Objectives. First is to compare the structure of different sugars. Second is to understand the classification of carbohydrates. The materials used are barbecue sticks and clay with different colors. The carbon is green, the hydrogen is blue, the oxygen is pink.
Good afternoon, Mom. My name is Danica Chris Ibunani, and I'm going to show you my complete structure model for monosaccharide and its examples. But first of all, what is monosaccharide? A monosaccharide, also known as simple sugar, is the most basic form of carbohydrates. The two main functions of monosaccharide is to store energy and function as building block of more complex sugar that are used in structural elements. Example of monosaccharide are glucose, galactose, and fructose. But for my part, I will only talk about two types of monosaccharide, the glucose and the galactose. Glucose is a monosaccharide with 6 carbons. This is the cyclic form of glucose. This is how it looks like. This is the alpha form of glucose with the hydroxyl group down on carbon 1. This is the carbon 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The chemical formula of glucose is C6H12O6, and it turns out that the carbohydrates have the empirical formula C1H2O1. Another type of monosaccharide called galactose. Glucose, galactose are very similar. They both form 6-member rings and are both aldohexoses. The difference between glucose and galactose is that there is only one difference. The glucose and galactose differ at carbon 4 because the carbon 4 is pointing up in galactose, but in glucose is pointing down. Glucose and galactose are known as the stereoisomers. They have the same chemical formula, they have the same function, their atoms are in the same way that are connected, but the only difference is that the way their hydroxyl group are oriented in space. So the stereoisomers have the same connectivity, but they have different spatial arrangements of the atoms. That's all, and thank you.
Good afternoon, ma'am. I am Sherilyn Cupelayo, and I am going to present the complete structure of disaccharides and its types. But first, let us know what is disaccharide. Disaccharide, also called double sugar, or any substance that is composed of two molecules of simple sugar, also known as monosaccharides, that are linked to each other. There are three major types of disaccharides: sucrose, maltose, and lactose. But in my part, I will only show you two types, the maltose and the sucrose. Here is the structure of maltose. Maltose, also known as maltobiose or malt sugar, is a disaccharide formed from two units of glucose joined with a glycosidic bond. They are typically composed of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Maltose is made by combining two glucose units together. Glucose has 6 carbons, 6 oxygen, and 12 hydrogens. When two glucose molecules combine, an oxygen and 2 hydrogens are lost as water. So now, maltose has 12 carbons, 11 oxygens, and 22 hydrogen. So it has a chemical formula of C12H22O11. Next is the sucrose. Sucrose is a molecule composed of two monosaccharides, namely the glucose and fructose, and connected via glycosidic bond. This non-reducing disaccharide has a chemical formula of C12H22O11. Sucrose has a monoclinic crystal structure and is quite soluble in water. There are no anomeric hydroxyl groups in a sucrose molecule. It can therefore be classified as a non-reducing sugar since it does not act as reducing agent. Overall, maltose and sucrose are both forms of sugar called disaccharides. Disaccharides are created when two simple sugar combine. Maltose is a combination of malt and glucose, while sucrose is a combination of glucose and fructose. Maltose has a generalized formula of C12H22O11, which is identical to sucrose. That's all, thank you.
Good afternoon, ma'am. I'm going to present the complete structure model of polysaccharide and its types. So what is polysaccharide? Polysaccharide is formed when many monosaccharide molecules join together. The process of condensing many similar molecules to form a large molecule is identified as polymerization. Starch, cellulose, and glycogen are types of polysaccharides. But for my part, I will only talk about the starch. Starch is made up of a very large number of glucose molecules condensed together to form chains of glucose units. These chains are a composition of straight and branched chains. So this is the cyclic form of starch. This is how it looks. The basic chemical formula of the starch molecule is C6H10O5. It is the starch polysaccharide found in plant cells and exists in two forms. Amylose, which is the helical form of starch comprised only of alpha-1, 4 linkages, and amylopectin that has a structure like glycogen, except that the branched 1, 6 linkages are present on only about 1 in 30 monomers. Generalization. Therefore, carbohydrates are commonly known as sugars. It is the hydrates of carbon, and the carbon and hydrogen has a ratio of 2 to 1. Hydrogen is 2 and carbon is 1. Carbohydrates is classified into two, which is the simple and the complex. The simple carbohydrates is divided into two, which is the monosaccharide and disaccharides. Monosaccharides has three types, which is the glucose, fructose, and galactose, while the disaccharides has three types, which is the maltose, lactose, and sucrose. Under the complex carbs is the polysaccharide, which has three types, the starches, fibers, and glycogen. Monosaccharides are simple sugars made up of 3 to 7 carbons, and they can exist as a linear chain or as ring-shaped molecules. Disaccharides are sugars that form when two simple sugars monosaccharides combine to form a disaccharide. When two monosaccharides are linked together by glycosidic linkage, the resulting product is a disaccharide, while polysaccharides is formed when many monosaccharide molecules are joined together.